is good, guys? It is Reed and welcome back to another video. Today we got How to Make Your Magic Better, episode 19, dealing with hecklers. Now this is going to be an absolutely awesome video. We're going to talk about different types of hecklers and how to deal with each type specifically, some different effects that work really well for hecklers, how to actually confront them, and a ton of other stuff. So this is an absolutely jam-packed video that is going to provide you a ton of useful information when performing magic. And that's really what the How to Make Your Magic Better series is all about. If you'd like to check out episodes 1 through 18, I'll link the playlist up there. Now if you guys like these type of videos, don't forget to like the video, drop me a comment. If you would like to check out some private lessons, you can at the link below. Or if you'd like to join my Mentalism membership, where I'm teaching every effect from practical mental magic, and you'll get access to 2 new videos every single month, plus some bonus videos and some of my best mentalism effects that have never been taught anywhere else. You can check out the membership and join the mentalist tier at the link in the description. But with all that said, guys, let's not waste any more time and let's get right into the video. So dealing with hecklers. First, let's start off with what is a heckler and what do I mean by this term. Now this might sound like something that a lot of you guys are familiar with, but my definition might be slightly different than the typical one that you're used to or the one that you might have yourself. So to me, there's only one definition that is a true heckler. It is someone who deliberately ruins your effect. That is it, that is all. If someone is doing something that deliberately ruins your effect, they are a heckler. Now this can come in a lot of different forms. It can come with them being very vocal and interrupting you. It can come with them not following your instructions. It can come with them making comments, right, while you're performing. It can come with them touching things they're not supposed to touch, which sort of falls into the instruction part of things. But ultimately, that's really all it comes down to. And I want to make the clear distinction here because I find the term heckler is thrown around far too much in the magic community. There are a lot of people who you might think are hecklers, you might think their behavior is heckling, but it's really not. And a lot of it comes down to us as a performer. And believe it or not, your performance style, and the magic that you do can actually lead to more or less hecklers. And we're going to get into that and what are some of these factors that contribute to that. But at the end of the day, I would say in 75% of cases that people are calling hecklers, it's just their poor choices as a performer, from the scripts to the justifications to even the magic that they're doing. A lot of people actually end up creating hecklers that normally wouldn't have even been heckling. The other thing is people tend to take scenarios that are not people heckling, right? They're not deliberately trying to ruin your effect. They could be accidentally, it could be happening. It could be your poor explanation that causes them not to follow instructions that's leading to them being a heckler, but they're really not. So you really have to sit back, kind of take that third-person perspective at your situation and really decide, hey, is this person heckling? Because one of the worst things you can do is call out someone as a heckler when they're really not trying to heckle you at all. So to really nail this point home, someone is not a heckler if they don't understand you. Okay, if they genuinely don't understand your instructions, they're not being a heckler, that's on you. Someone is not a heckler if they do something wrong by accident. Again, they're laymen, they're not as familiar with a deck of cards. If maybe the deck was, facing this way and you said deal cards from the top, and they start dealing like this when you meant the top of the deck as we would traditionally think of it as magicians, that's poor instruction on your part. That's not heckling. If someone reasonably questions you, right? If you're doing a magic performance, people are curious. People want to know how it's done. It's the nature of the art. If people reasonably question your methods, that's okay. They're not being a heckler. You just need to be prepared as a magician at how you're going to address this. Let's take an example of a mentalist who does a poor billet peek and someone says, well, why did you have me write that down? You must have just looked at it. They're not being a heckler, right? That's a result of your poor scripting, poor justifications for the billets. If you'd like to learn about billet work, you can check out Mentalism 101 episode 3. I'll link it up there. It can come down to your poor performance, perhaps your poor routining, so many things. And then you need to be able to decide how you're going to respond to that, because sometimes maybe it's not always your fault and people are just curious and they ask a question. And if we take the mentalism example, you need to think how you're going to respond to that. What's your justification? You're not going to want to admit that, yeah, I looked at the billet, so what are you going to say? Well, there's no way I could have seen through, right? I showed you, there's no way I could have seen through. That was in your hand the entire time. Maybe you want to address how you do this. You say, look, I can't actually read your mind, but I actually have people write things down because they can get a better visual connection and really visualize that thing. And that helps me pick up on their body language, and I can kind of use that to influence them and use some psychology in different ways to try to take my best educated guess at what it is you're thinking of. It doesn't always work, but it was able to work this time, right? So you have to think about these things such as your process and your style and what you want your character to be so that you can answer these questions and be prepared when people start questioning your magic and methods. And finally, if someone calls out your poor magic or your flashes, they're not being a heckler. Again, guys, a lot of the time you need to look internally. If you're getting a lot of hecklers, you're getting heckled all the time, think about when you first started performing magic, the very first time. I'm gonna guess it was probably to your family or friend, and you probably didn't do it very well, right? And there's a good chance that they said, you know, I saw that, or that wasn't that good. They weren't being a heckler, they're just being honest with you. And if you're doing bad magic that's not well scripted and routine, or the effect selection is off, people have a right to say that. And you should take that as constructive criticism and not heckling. And if you flash, again, that's on you. We need more practice. It's okay, it's gonna happen. I flash from time to time. A lot of times people don't see it because of my scripting and the way I cover it, but that's something that comes with experience. And if people call you out, sometimes you just have to bite the bullet and accept it, but it's not their fault. They're not being a heckler. So now, why is all of this important? Well, heckling can really ruin a performance if you have a true heckler. If someone's interrupting you and you know, grabbing the cards out of your hands and really being rude and disrespectful, it's gonna throw off the momentum. It's gonna make it feel like you're not in command of your own performance, which is a really bad look, especially as a professional or just anyone in general. You really don't want that situation. So that's why dealing with hecklers is very important. Also, like I said, it can make you look bad, not very professional. It is really a crucial skill as a magician, and something that we'd like to avoid, but ultimately can't really be avoided. Every magician's gonna run into hecklers at some point, and you have to learn how to deal with them. So that's what we're going to talk about further in this video. And finally, it just makes you a better performer, more seasoned, more equipped to deal with all scenarios. If you can deal with hecklers, they're going to be one of the most difficult types of people to deal with in our performance environment, and so it's really key that we know how to handle them. So let's jump in a bit more to the meat and potatoes of the video. So first, let's start off with types of hecklers. So as far as I'm concerned, there are 3 different types of hecklers, and all hecklers can be boiled down into this category. Now, these categories are developed more based off the internal reasons why this person might be heckling you. And it can kind of come back to, you know, their life and how they were brought up and all kinds of things, right? There's a really big psychological element to why there are hecklers, but I think they can all fall into one of these 3 categories. Now, if you have another category in mind, please leave it in the comments. I would love to hear if you have another category of heckler that I might have missed. So the first type is the arrogant and or obnoxious type of heckler. So this is the person who is probably calling out and being very loud and interrupting you while you're performing. And the reason for them heckling is because they might lack manners. They often like to be the center of attention in a room. So the fact that you've taken that away from them, they are trying to kind of butt heads with you to get that attention back on them. They feel like interrupting you and being loud and calling you out on things that aren't reasonable is a way for them to gain the room and gain attention, and they just want to be obnoxious, right? Some people, they just genuinely have bad intentions, and the reason they're heckling is simply because they want to be a bad person. And that's all it comes down to. They're obnoxious, they're arrogant, they don't have good manners, and that can be, you know, that's probably in all facets of their life. It's not just for magic, but it's definitely not going to play well for you. The next type of heckler is the brainiac or the ego type of heckler. So this is the person who thinks they're so smart, right? They really think that there's no way magic could fool them. They can figure out anything. So they're really, you know, not there to enjoy it. They're there to figure it out. And a lot of people, like almost, I'd say 50-50 are the people, maybe even more, who like to just, you know, watch magic and enjoy it, and then there's the people who like to figure it out. But most people, you know, they'll watch it and they'll try to figure it out in their own head, but they won't actually become a heckler. They might ask a question here or there, but they're not a heckler. This is the type of person who really thinks, like, there's no way I could get fooled. I'm smarter than anyone else here who's getting fooled. It's an ego thing, right? They have an ego problem. They feel like you are saying, I'm smarter than you because I can fool you. That's what they feel like you're saying to them by performing. So then they want to prove that that's not true, basically. Prove it to themselves, prove it to everyone else. It's an ego thing. They want everyone to know that, you know, they can't be fooled. So again, they might be the type who doesn't follow your instructions or reaches for things, tries to touch something, right? Or you have the card in their hand they're not supposed to look at yet, and they want to look at it just so they can't be fooled, right? Just so they don't miss something. They might ask, hey, what's in your hand there, or something like that, right? And then the final type is the drunk and or stupid person. And the drunk side of things and the stupid side of things, this one's a bit more tricky, and you take this a bit more with a grain of salt. And in a lot of cases, you might not even call this person a heckler, but this is just a person who honestly is just drunk, and so they can't watch magic, they can't follow instructions, they're ruining your effects. Usually not because they want to, but they should know better, and that, you know, they shouldn't be in this environment in this state, and they shouldn't be participating in your tricks if they can't, you know, even walk straight. And ultimately, you know, it might not always be their fault, but you as a performer need to be able to identify these people and definitely avoid them, right? Especially if you're performing in front of others. You don't want to call up a drunk person as your spectator. Then you kind of have the stupid people who kind of fit this category too. They're just frankly too dumb to be able to understand and follow the trick, and they're forgetting what they thought of. And again, it might not be their fault, but at the end of the day, they're going to be the type of person who, you know, is not going to follow your instruction. They're probably going to ruin your effect. Things are going to fall flat. They might not even understand the magic. And, you know, this is kind of like not a huge heckler group and not something that you'll often run into, more so the drunk side. But it is something that, again, while it might not always be their fault, it is rude, right? And I would consider it as a group of heckler, and it does need its own kind of separate category away from the other two. So now let's talk a little bit about how to do it and prevention of hecklers. So we'll start with some general techniques, and then I'll explain, you know, how each technique can be used with the 3 different groups and which are best for the different groups. So first of all, the most important thing, and the one thing you can always do, is be confident, control the room, and establish that credibility early on. You want to be projecting. You want to take control. You want people to listen to you and respect you as a performer, and you can do that simply by doing little things, by making eye contact, projecting, feeling confident in yourself, which will then come through in your performance. And, you know, who wants to follow a leader who's not confident, who doesn't believe in themselves, right? No one. That'll breed people to heckle you. If you look unconfident, you look like you don't know what you're doing, they're just naturally going to poke at you a little bit more, especially the, you know, the arrogant, obnoxious type. They're going to have no problem walking all over you. So you want to be confident, you want to try to control the room. I've talked about confidence a couple of times on this channel. I'll link a recent video I did in my Mentalism 101 series on why confidence is so important in mentalism, but it's very applicable to magic as well. And you also want to establish that credibility quickly. We talk about openers here on the channel a lot and how to approach groups of strangers. I'll link a video where I kind of cover this topic that has to do with approaching groups of strangers and why establishing your credibility quickly is so important. So we want to find our openers, we want effects that are quick and hard hitting and sort of surefire to, you know, quickly tell these people, hey, I'm the real deal. I am not just your uncle performing a card trick, because, you know, they don't know what to think of you. They don't owe you anything. And so if you first come on, they're, you know, they might give you that first opportunity, but if it doesn't go well, if they're not impressed, they're gonna say, okay, well, this next time, you know, I can walk all over this guy. He's not very good, you know. But the second you have established credibility, you now have control of the room. People, they want to see what you have to offer, right? You've earned their respect and their time now, because they don't owe you anything. But once you earn that and they actually want to see you after you perform your opener, you're good to go. Next thing that I want to say that's very important is to not jump the gun, right? Give people a chance. 90% of cases where you think someone might be a heckler, they're probably not. And, you know, just because someone asks you a question or doesn't understand something, or, you know, you might think they're calling you out, they're probably genuinely just asking and they're curious, right? Don't jump the gun. Try to never think someone's a heckler. Always try to avoid that as much as you possibly can, jumping to the conclusion that they're a heckler. So if you notice that someone's starting to be a heckler, starting to exhibit some of these character traits of like really starting to question you, or maybe not perfectly following your instructions, or just being a bit loud and arrogant, target them early on. Go to them. Pick an effect that is surefire, maybe that they don't touch the cards too much, or they're not too like involved physically, but you know, get them to name things and pick things and get them involved. That will bring their guard down. They'll respect you a bit more. And a lot of times people who are heckling actually want to be involved. They just don't know how to express that. So if you can target them early on, and I'll show you an example of that a little later on in the video, but if you can target them later on, you can actually avoid them from, you know, becoming a full-blown heckler. And that's a really key, vital piece of information. People tend to shy away from hecklers when you really should be attacking them, right? Now you also want to think about your performances and your scripting, right? As I tell you that it's very important to think about your outs, right? When you're looking at effects, think about what you would do if this happened. In that process, you should be thinking about what would happen if someone questioned me? What would happen if I flashed here? What would happen if someone asked me, hey, why did I have to write that down on a billet, right? You should have your justifications and sort of your heckler lines, what you're gonna say when someone asks these questions. So a few examples, especially with mentalism, a lot of times you can chalk things up to your process, right? You can explain like, look, I can't really read minds, but the way I have to do it is I need that person to be able to visualize that thing on their billet. Like, you can say whatever you want. They don't control you reading minds. And again, I made a whole video on your process in mentalism, which you can go check out. Like I've said before, your process could be, I gotta go eat a piece of broccoli before I can read your mind. Like, it can be anything, because they can't tell you how to read minds. It's your process. So if we take this to a more realistic example, right? I need you to write down and stare at that billet so you can focus on it, and that will help me tap into your head. That's my process. That's why I needed you to do it. Not so I could read it, but so you could do that, right? And you can kind of tie this into magic as well, right? Card magic. This is the way the magic works. You can say like, look, like I'm gonna show you something magical, but like the way this magic works, it has to be done this way. You have to put both hands on the card and rub it and heat it up, and that the heat is what makes the magic work. You know, if you do that, now they're not going to be so likely to flip it over and take a look at it, right? Whatever it is. If they look at it prematurely, you're doing a transposition, they look and see the card has changed before you've even, you know, picked the next card. You could say, look, like, you know, this was a sleight of hand demonstration, and you know, you might have caught that it switched, but you didn't catch me when I switched it, right? You didn't notice it switched, right? So you can kind of save the effect a little bit, but think about what you want to say. Have these sort of stock lines. You know, when you say, what's the card you're just thinking of? And someone says, do I have to tell you? You say, well, yeah, like I've already committed to my prediction, right? That's a common thing you'll get in prediction effects. People are like, do I have to tell you like what I'm thinking of, or do I have to tell you what card I picked? Or, you know, you say pick a card, and people might say, can I switch, right? Think about what to say if someone asks to switch, or they want to keep going, right? You say, you know, are you sure on your riffle force? And they say, no, keep going. Think about what you would do, how you would handle it. Now, if you do have hecklers and actually dealing with hecklers once you actually have one, avoid propless and sort of not really surefire effects, because the hecklers are going to be the type who are really gonna, you know, try to push the boundaries of your magic. So if you have them if you're trying to do like a restrictive propless divination where you're trying to put them in a box and it's sort of a psychology thing, they'll probably try to think of the most like outlandish thing possible so that it doesn't work, right? They don't want to see it work. So avoid that. Avoid procedural stuff where they're like doing a lot of procedure and they're going to get bored and they might mess up your procedure. And avoid stuff that they're involved in, they're touching the deck, right? Where like avoid a transpo maybe where I'm putting the card in their hand and I have to trust that they're not going to flip it over prematurely. I might do something like re-swindled, which I've taught here on the channel, where you can just do the magic and they just watch, right? Some of those effects tend to be better and stuff that's really, really surefire. Another great option is to have some heckler-proof effects. Now, these are effects that are generally surefire, also might be funny and kind of call them out in a funny way. In a second, I'll get into the procedure of how you kind of deal with them once you identify them, but these are one of the steps, or the middle step of the procedure that can be very useful, is to actually do a heckler-proof effect. Sometimes, again, you just need to perform to them and that'll get them to chill out once you get them involved. And so you're going to want to have something that you can show them that, you know, is pretty much done in your hands, that you're really confident that they won't be able to mess up, just so they can actually understand, like, oh no, like he got me involved and he's pretty good. Let me, you know, give him a break here, right? So one example of sort of the funny heckler type effect where you're kind of calling them out but in a joking way is the hand over mouth effect, where you say, you know, okay, I want you to think of anything you want, okay? And they would think of it, and you say, okay, perfect, I'm gonna try to read you, but in order to read you, I need you to do this. Take your hand like this, okay, perfect. Just take it like this and just leave it right here. And you do that, then you just start performing other effects, right? And they're just standing here like this, and you can say like, okay, I'll get back to you in a second. And then you just go into another effect and you just leave them. Right? You just leave them like that. That's funny. I've seen, you know, if this is your style and you think you can get away with it, you can do the card where you write like FU on it and you force it to them. You know, it's not for everyone, but there's like different funny things like that. Some effect that's more like surefire that you can kind of show a heckler as like an actual effect is like a simple like Erdnase change, where you have a card and you do the Erdnase change, but you really make it seem like you're palming the card. So you go like this, and you kind of hold it like this, and you say watch, and that card changed, and you just leave your hand super like there's a palm and like this, and they will definitely point out, they'll say, well, what's in your hand? And you look like and then you show that it's gone, and then you could clean that up with like a KM move, and that's just like a really cool, like they'll think they got you but you get them, and it usually works to kind of bring them down and like, you know, show them that like, okay, hey, like I'm a step ahead here, just let me do my thing. So now when you actually have identified a heckler and it's a true heckler, you want to start light. If they do something extremely rude, sure, you can, you know, go to level 3, but start with level 1, just light kind of comments. sort of jokey, just correct them. You can go as far as saying like, hey, I'm the magician here, just let me do my thing, you know, if you don't mind. Like just smile, laugh, be nice, just answer the questions with your heckler lines and that sort of thing. The next level, you might go into some of these more jokey effects. You might be a little bit more stern with them, like, hey, you know, I'm doing my thing here, just don't touch the cards unless I tell you, you know, these are my cards, whatever you want to say. And then finally, if it's really, you know, at the point where you need to like get them to leave, or, you know, you need to leave, you just say, look, like, I'm the magician here, like it's quite disrespectful what you're doing, let me do my performance. Just stay quiet. Everyone here is trying to listen. I'm trying to perform and keep everyone entertained here. So just let me do my thing and we can all enjoy it, all right? And ultimately you can ask them to leave if you want, or you can, you know, move on yourself. It's just not worth your time. I've made a whole video on how to perform for hecklers in my Dear Magician series, which I'll link. And the main message of that video is just to avoid hecklers. So ultimately, if you can, just avoid them, right? Don't perform for them. That's ultimately the key. But sometimes you'll be in a situation where you end up performing for them, or you have to. And here's some of the things you can do. In terms of the different types of hecklers, the drunk/stupid heckler, you really want to avoid getting them involved, right? You just want them to be there watching, kind of laughing. They'll usually give pretty good reactions, but you don't want to do anything complicated at all. Everything that you can keep in your hands. And generally, you might not need to call them out unless they're like being really, like kind of end up being obnoxious because of the being drunk and they're, you know, being loud and that sort of thing. But generally they're pretty easy to deal with. Just don't perform to them, right? Perform to other people, let them watch. Ego, brainiac type, where they're trying to figure everything out. Ultimately, the way to do that is to just be careful with the effects selection, right? Definitely don't do anything, you know, that's not so surefire. Think of things that are well justified with good methods. You know, just strong magic, ultimately. Have your heckler lines prepared, be prepared to address what they say, and definitely don't jump the gun with these people, because generally they're not like trying to be mean, but it definitely can come off that way, right? And then the worst type, the arrogant, obnoxious type, you gotta be confident, you gotta, you know, not shy away from them, attack them. If it's early on, like I said, try to attack them, show them a trick and get them on your side. But if it's too late, you can try the heckler tricks on them, try to talk with them, being confident, establishing your credibility, taking control of the room, and then trying to get them involved early on are the best things to do. So now I want to talk about a few examples of hecklers I've dealt with. So I had one scenario, I was out at like a party type thing, and there was this girl I knew and she asked me to show some magic to her boyfriend. And it was one of those situations where I'd kind of been doing a bunch of magic, he hadn't seen anything yet, so I was kind of just about to finish up, and I just wanted to do one quick trick for him, so I kind of just took him off to the side. No one else was really watching, and I did my cerebral sandwich effect. And that effect is basically have them put the aces in two different spots in the deck, they shuffle, and then when we go through the cards, they've happened to randomly shuffle one card between those two aces magically. While they're shuffling, they also think of a card, and then I kind of take that sandwiched card, put it off to the side, end up revealing that the card that they had thought of is the one that they also shuffled between the aces. So for part of the psychology and the method, obviously that card that's between the aces that's off to the side has to be left off to the side for a moment, and we don't want them looking at it prematurely. I'd set them off like on a ledge, and I always try to put myself between the spectator in case they try to reach for it, or I'll put it where it's like closer to me on the table. And he was like, he said the card, I think it was the 4 of spades. He was being difficult for like most of the trick already. He was definitely a obnoxious and also an ego-driven kind of heckler. He definitely thought he couldn't be fooled. And so then he says this card out loud. He's like, there's no way, there's no way. And then he reaches for it. I said, hold on. I want to show you that there's you know, your card's not in here. Let's just check. Let's make sure first, because that's part of, you know, part of the sort of building up of the anticipation. I go through the deck to show that their card's not here. He's like, no, I want to see. I'm like, wait, just look. And I'm going through it. He's like, no, I'm not. And he keeps reaching for the card, and I'm kind of blocking him. I'm like, just wait, just look. And then as I go down to continue spreading, he just like pushes through me, grabs the card, and sees that it wasn't the card that he named. And he's like, see, I told you. I knew you were going to try to do something sneaky, whatever. You know, at that point, I realized, like, I just have no interest in performing for this person. I don't owe them anything. I didn't even try to justify or fix it or save anything. I was just like, okay. I took the cards and I walked away. It's like, oh, but you're good. I'm sure you're good. And some comment, I walked away, and it was cool, and that was it. And his girlfriend was like, did you show him anything? And I was like, I tried, but he really just doesn't want to see anything, so I didn't bother. And that's what it was, right? So that's one situation where I just walked away from a heckler. I'm gonna show you a quick clip of a trick I did for my football team where I was doing unshuffling the colors. I did it on one of the coaches, and he was kind of the, I would say, the arrogant, obnoxious type, where I gave him the deck and I said, shuffle it after he had picked a card. And you see in the clip in a second, he goes through, because I had my back turned, and he takes out the card and puts it in his pocket to try to get me, right? It was the first time they had seen me perform magic in front of my football team, and he probably thinks, oh, this guy's just like, some amateur or something. And right there, he's not following instructions. One of the things I've said about a heckler. And I end up saving it in a really, really cool way, and I won't spoil it, but you can see how that all plays out. Stop right there. Remember that card? Yeah. Everyone see it?
Yeah, sure.
All right, shuffle it, and I don't even want to know what it is. That's fair, right? I was looked away. All right. We'll see what we got here. I have a backup plan that I do. It's called the unshuffle, right? It happens super quick, so I need you guys to pay attention. Watch. I go like this, and just like that. It actually unshuffles all of the black cards and all of the red cards, just like that. That's weird, right?
Fucking right, that's weird.
There's one card that's actually vanished, right? Actually disappeared.
No fucking way.
I'll actually make it appear inside his pocket. Now that you've seen that, you can kind of see what I did. I thought quick on my feet. I realized, hey, if the card's not here, I just took a guess. I'm like 100% he just put it in his pocket. I kind of knew the type of guy he was. And so I saved it and I thought on my feet and turned it into a pretty incredible effect. So that's an example of how you can actually save a trick from a heckler. So now that you know the different types of hecklers, how to handle them, and you've got some examples, let's quickly summarize with how to improve with dealing with hecklers, some things you can actively do to improve. Focus on your scripting, think about your scripts, make sure they're logical and sound. Make sure your justifications are logical, because poor justifications are one of the biggest things that hecklers can attack. If you say something, you're trying to justify something and it doesn't make sense, they'll take advantage of that. And it's really easy to make logical justifications. You just need enough that what you say doesn't go through their brain and they critically think about it. It just makes enough sense that they kind of let it bypass. Be prepared, like I talk about. Think about what you would say in different situations if a heckler says, I don't want to tell you what I'm thinking of, or if they shuffle your memorized deck. Think about what you would do, what effect you would do, that kind of thing. Have your heckler lines, your heckler effects that you'll do, and you'll be all set. You'll be good to go. And finally, just performance mileage. Best thing you can do to get some experience in dealing with different people, and it's absolutely great for getting you better. All right, guys, so that is it for How to Make Your Magic Better, episode 19. I hope you found this video valuable. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought of this video and if it was helpful to you. Hecklers are something I get asked about all the time, so hopefully this was helpful. If you guys would like to check out some private lessons, you can at the link below, or if you'd like to join my Mentalism membership, where you get access to 2 exclusive videos every single month teaching all kinds of incredible mentalism effects. You can check that out as well in the description. With all that said, guys, don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video.